When we speak of ISB and its impact on students, the one word that stands out is transformation. We welcome bright young minds to the school, see them graduate with flying colors, and go on to accomplish some incredible things. He founded the Nudge Institute with a mission to contribute towards creating a poverty-free India by driving action to address inequality and other key social issues that the country is grappling with. After spending close to 2 decades leading sales, consulting and business development for some of the largest global telecom and technology companies, he followed his calling to create impact in the social sector by establishing one of India's foremost non-profit action institutes. In less than a decade since its inception, he has scaled the Nudge Institute to offer programs across social innovation, rural development, and skill development and entrepreneurship, while working with several government agencies and corporate partners to amplify social impact. He was named in the ET 40 Under 40 list in 2017, is a recipient of the Mahatma Award for Social Impact, and serves on the boards of several non-profits. Join me for a conversation that delves into the inspiring journey of Atul Satija from the PGP Class of 2004, founder and CEO of the Nudge Institute, and founder 2.0 and CEO of Give. Morning, Atul. First of all, it's such a pleasure to be here in your premises at the Nudge, and I think you have a unique name for this premises.
We call it Nudgeville.
Nudgeville. Whenever I think of you and think of the work that you're doing at the Nudge and many other similar, areas, the thing that comes to me the most in my mind is purpose. For me, you're a very fine example of having a purpose and pursuing that. So with those few words, I'd love to sort of hear from you, Atul.
So thanks so much firstly for flying here from Chandigarh, which is where I grew up, to here, which is where I work now. I've had a very meandering journey, Guru. Like first 8 years were like anyone trying to figure out your own, roots in your career. I changed about 8 jobs in 8 years, and nobody at campus would hire me when I was graduating from ISB saying, look, will you even stay a year in the company? But I think a lot of it was, growing up an engineer, going into a career, getting into a B school, coming out, you're figuring yourself out. So I was changing companies just to look for something better to do, but I didn't know what was my definition of what is better. Actually, interestingly, the seed of my social sector journey started in the final term at ISB.
Wow.
So there was a DC-based company called Voxiva, which was a social impact organization, and they were looking to start their India operations. And they used to pay me when I was in the final term at ISB, and I used to work in the nights for them while campus interviews and everything was going on.
Interesting.
So I helped them start their India operations, but I discovered that the work they did has actually very deep meaning. So I used to work with them, and it started giving me a little bit more, call it joy, that impactful work can happen in regular job market. And this could be a potential choice in life. Obviously, I went back to regular corporate life right after ISB. I joined Adobe from campus and then Google, etc. It so happened that I got lucky. I was in Gurgaon then working with Google, and there was this non-profit there called End Poverty, which was very close to where I was living. And they used to work in Mewat district at the border of Haryana and Rajasthan. It has one of the lowest HDI indicators that you would know.
Yeah.
But the time that I spent working in Mayo Muslim and Mayo Sardar communities with the lowest HDI indicators in rural development groomed me into this understanding of the space. But more importantly, I discovered that I was enjoying this work more than I was enjoying my day job in Google. And I think that 2 years of doing that gave me the confidence that I find more meaning and joy, but more importantly, that I can actually add value in that work, because the capabilities that I had built in my corporate career, I realized that they were just as useful there as they were in my corporate day job.
So you could use these learnings and just sort of put them in terms of application in a different sector.
Work brought me to Bangalore. Google was moving its headquarters from Singapore to Tokyo for the region. And to stay back within India, which was my long-term design, I left Google and joined a Bangalore-based startup in Mobi.
Yeah.
And I did 5 years within Mobi. But at the end of the year, I would reflect back and say, what was this for? And then you realize like the purpose of that work wasn't as exciting as I had tasted in my non-profit volunteering before. And at 38, I felt like this is a good timing for me to make the transition. So I moved out of InMob in 2015, and that's when I decided to start the Nudge.
When you started off the Nudge, did you start with the, I'm curious on two things. One is, did you on day one have this sort of template all figured out? Of course, plans change all the time, but did you have a starting point and a template with which you went in? And why did you choose the name Nudge?
I think in my case, because it was desire to contribute to the social ills that you see around you, we started with what we are okay doing and what we are not okay doing. I'm neither a doctor, nor a teacher, nor any other professional that can bring those skills to work. I'm a management graduate, thanks to ISB, and career's been in technology space. I think what we started with a broad sort of decision saying that, let's start with the urban work, let's not go to rural. Let's study the communities where you see a lot of disadvantages, a lot of vulnerabilities, and figure out what crops up as the thing you want to work on. So the first 6 months of Nudge, we spent time in the slums in Bangalore. We chose to be in urban areas. We chose to not work with government for the first 2 years, knowing that the responsibilities and the challenges of working with government, we may not be able to handle. So we knew that we will do our work outside of government. We knew that it will be urban. And I think as we spent time in Bangalore slums in particular, but also Delhi and Bombay, we started seeing like our generation, people in late 30s, 40s, had already given up on aspirations for their life. But they started to say that, look, if I don't solve for my child and their aspirations, we will have to give up on the hopes and dreams for them as well. And that was very heartbreaking to say that even at 30s and 40s, people are giving up on hopes. And now you see in your startup world, people doing startup in 60s as well, right?
Yeah.
So we decided to work with youth, given that a need that was cropping up. So our first program was Gurukul, like you alluded to earlier, which is to get underprivileged youth skilled for entry-level jobs. We started with that, and I think like most startups, we had an emergent strategy, as we call in management, right? So we kept evolving our strategy based on what was visible in front of us, and organization kept evolving. To name Nudge, it came from Thaler and Sunstein's book, obviously. And it stuck to me that, a nudge could be so much more powerful than brute force, that you can make big things happen with that.
I'm trying to draw connects with the networks that you've been able to nurture and build. I don't think you've done that specific saying, this is what I want as an outcome or this thing, but must have been really positive in terms of its effects for you subsequently.
Because I started mid-career, what happened is that I was able to reach out to, say, Ajit at ISB, or Pramath, who I had not interacted till I started Nudge, or even Rajat Gupta, obviously, who was in the early days very heavily involved with ISB's creation. They materially helped out. My first set of donors that we got for the Nudge were all the people who had informally seen and spent time with me in the past life. Nandan was the first person, and Nandan used to be an informal advisor at InMobi. And there was obviously a trust on the work, capability, etc. And Nandan came on board as the first funder. And I think I can go on and on about it, but I think few things I should underscore. One, all the 3 generations of ISB leaders, Rajat, Pramath, Ajit, they all joined our advisory board and helped me in my journey. Pramath talked at length about how to build a great institution, especially on the values, capability, long-termness, and how to keep the institution above you at the center of the work. I really carry that very deeply in Nudge and Give and everything I do. When I started Nudge, the first set of advisors beyond the ISB community were my InMobi previous people, my Google colleagues. So while they were funders like Nandan, but a lot of the ISB classmates of mine came forward. We call them founding supporters.
Okay.
People who donate money to our corpus every year with a 5-year commitment.
Oh, fantastic.
I have 9 classmates of mine who donate money every year to Nudge, and that money actually goes for our corpus, not even for our spending. That is so difficult to find money.
And this is from the class of 2004, your class?
Just class of 2004. And many people before my class and after as well are now starting to support.
Wow, that is such
amazing.
a fantastic endorsement and support system that you have going for the work that you're doing. But through your 9-year journey right now in this space itself, you've gone from Gurukul to Nudge more formally, but also Give as well, right?
Yeah.
What has led you to sort of, think about these various initiatives?
See, one of the first things I realized, Guru, when I entered the development space, first year we started with urban underprivileged youth skilling. But I think within a year we realized that in all startups, talent and capital we say are the 2 most important ingredients. But it is actually even more true in the development sector because you struggle for these 2 uniquely more in development space than you do in even regular corporates. Because the non-profit sector, just by the very nature that your customers aren't paying you money from where you have the profits to then hire the best talent, it's almost always reliant on the source of capital is different than the source of the customers that you work with or stakeholders you work with, which is the communities. So money is harder. Talent is even harder because if you can't pay, it's a first generation wealth we are creating in India. So when you see from that perspective, even attracting talent is very hard because out of 100 people we reach out to, only 2, 3, 4 can afford to be in the non-profit sector with the salaries that we can pay. Talent is more important than capital, we thought. So we started the first pure play non-profit incubator across India called Encore in our 2nd year. And as that stabilized, we started the first giving platform with an aspiration to scale in our 3rd year. And then I discovered that Give already existed for a long period of time before I started Give. It was called Goodwill when we started. And I think both talent and capital came together to, so Give merged into the Goodwill efforts I was working on. The founder was very in true spirit of giving, gave Give India to me and said, do whatever you want to do because I believe in you. And I think we'll do something good if Give is also something that you can support and drive. My life became exponentially more complex because I had 2 engines, Give and Nudge, to run together. But I think it all worked out for, from an impact lens, I feel it was the right thing to do.
Finding sort of the right talent in any field is a challenge, irrespective of what your ability to pay is. But to do so in the sector that you represent is even harder, as you just spoke about. But has there been something that you've found as a magical formula, so to speak, that has not only helped you attract talent, but also retain them?
I think like in every startup, there are a million small things that make up what you build. So communicating what you stand for, talking about your purpose, showcasing your current talent, what the life at the Nudge is, what the life at Give is, etc., are all important things to keep doing day in, day out. But I think there is something more than that as well. When I started Nudge, the first person who joined me, a person who I actually hired from ISB on campus in 2000, I'm remembering 2009 or 10.
Okay.
So he joined me in Google and my team from ISB.
Yeah.
And after me leaving Google and doing InMobi, he finishing his Google stint doing a startup. He was the first employee who joined me at Nudge, initially as a volunteer for 6 months without salary, and then continued with Nudge, and he still works with me. It's been 9 years. The second employee that we got was this colleague of mine from InMobi, who left InMobi to join Nudge once she heard what we were looking at doing, and she probably had a desire to give back on her own as well. My third employee was actually my ex-driver, Lokesh, who you met today.
Oh, wow.
Who is now the head of administration at the Nudge. Great learning and growth mindset. And he spoke Kannada, and all of our early mobilization was thanks to him speaking the language.
So you needed the local touch point.
And I think what I'm trying to say here is that if you zoom out of this talent question, it is a lot of these small little things that you kept gathering. And then you realize that because you have a great person on board, he brings 5 more. And because you have those 5 more, they attract a similar bar. So both the talent bar at the Nudge, as well as the purpose orientation of the talent that comes into the Nudge, was set up in the first year of the Nudge. And it has started to expand from there on. And we continue to see very, very top quality talent, equally committed talent, and very, very purpose aligned talent that is continuing to come into the Nudge. And as we've expanded the organization, it's become relatively easier for us to attract talent than I feel other organizations in our space feel.
The one thing that again, I go back to is how you've been able to set, in some sense, benchmarks in the very first year. And I'm sort of compelled to draw parallels to the ISB story in some sense, is that from the very first year, ISB, the founder said, this is where we are going to be. Because scaling excellence is a huge challenge. You got to start off in the first year saying, this is where I'm going to operate at, that this is the orbit, this is where I am. And in some sense, you managed to do that at the Nudge. I saw a post recently by one of your former colleagues at Google who called Nudge as the Y Combinator for social entrepreneurs. Do you agree with that assessment of your former colleague? And tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help other social entrepreneurs.
I think Parminder Singh wrote that comment. And I think I relate to that in the sense that building a certain kind of culture of speed, scale, and innovation in the non-profit space is what we aspire to do. And I think at least in the organizations we have incubated or got a chance to accelerate or support through our grand challenges, we have seen that we are able to bring that culture of how to build a non-profit with the aspiration for scale, with the aspiration for speed, with the aspiration to innovate, to solve the problems at the scale at which they exist. And to that extent, I think it's true that we are trying to build like the ecosystem in the non-profit sector that can actually make a big change happen. And that's true. And I think to what you said about ISB started with a certain aspiration for itself and a promise to the students. And I feel like the promise to the students we are continuing to beat year after year. Whether it was my batch, the third batch, where I felt I got more than what was promised to me. And when I meet the students of ISB now, they continue to feel like ISB is delivering on its promise and more year after year. And that's pretty much, in my mind, the journey of what we have seen ISB do. If we are able to replicate that in Nudge, that we are able to deliver to our talent and to our stakeholders outside, deliver more than the expectations that we are setting ourselves for them on, I think that will be lovely.
In the first couple of years, the way I think of it, Atul, is that it was like the promise and also the potential, as an idea. But subsequently, I think it's the performance. And when I say performance, I'm sort of referring to alumni, because when our alumni went out and succeeded in whatever fields that they chose to be in, it's just like an injection of energy and a constant reminder that that's the promise and the potential with which we started. And therefore we sort of, it's like a gentle nudge as well, so that we remain true to that course.
I think for all institutions, Guru, like you very rightly said, right? The value of an institution, it's on my resume forever.
Yeah.
Right. And the better ISB does, the more you realize that it actually contributes back to you and you contribute back to it.
Correct.
And I think the strength of the institution has actually grown exponentially since my time, just because the alumni network is not just large, but it is also insanely, call it contributory to India's journey.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a very potent force, and I think it's only growing in both scale, size, and significance, in the years to come. So, Atul, one of the things that I noticed, and we spent a few seconds on our way up here, is the slogan that you have for the nudge about poverty alleviation. But what really caught my attention is the second line, which is in our lifetime. And poverty alleviation is a distant could be a distant pipe dream, but this in our lifetime drives this sense of urgency. Uh, just explain to us a little bit about your rationale and your thought process behind that, which drives the work that you do.
See, if you think of it, Guru, in the last 75 years, we have solved for our poverty for the most part. 75% of India living in poverty to a single digits now. But look at where we stand right now. In the last decade, 2 decades, we have solved for physical infrastructure. We are almost there till the last mile. Digital infrastructure, one of the best in the world. Financial infrastructure, everybody has a bank account which is active, and with UPI, access to so many more things. But we also have social infrastructure. India has 11.9 million self-help groups. 100 million women are connected through self-help groups, which is the largest social fabric connecting 500 million people of the country into the economy and society. So with all these, call it foundational work done, building jobs, livelihoods, and economic opportunities for every Indian can easily be achieved in less than a full generation. So I strongly think that this is the generation that has a very real opportunity to eradicate poverty, which India has never done since independence. So contributing to that is super joyful and the most meaningful thing we can do with our lives.
What a great sense of optimism, Atul. What do you think, Atul, that schools like ISB should be doing to sort of get more of our students and alumni to also move into this space? Because here the impact is just so much more direct in its, in the way one is able to drive change in terms of our curriculum or in terms of things that we should do within our programs. What would be your recommendation?
I think we have a huge opportunity at ISB for this. The reason why I say that is actually, I had a recent visit to ISB. My daughter had never seen ISB, and I was going to drop her to college shortly, and I thought she should come and see the campus. So I happened to be in Hyderabad, and I took her to see the campus. And I was very surprised when, on a very short notice, a lot of students from the Net Impact Club pinged me, and I ended up having a very impromptu conversation with them.
Lovely.
And I was very surprised to see two things. One, we actually had many people from development sector who were studying at ISB, and we had very many students from ISB who were looking to join the development sector post ISB, which wasn't the case in my time. I don't think I remember anybody from development sector in my batch. Many joined the space later, and obviously I have many peers of mine from my batch in the development space as well. But I think people from social sector joining ISB was like sort of very, I was very delighted when I saw that. I think there are 2-3 things that ISB can do and we can do. I think we are a development sector is a missing stakeholder when the PPTs are going on. We are missing when the entrepreneurial programs, exposures, internships, projects are going on, ELPs and all that, right?
Sure.
I think we need to consciously and intentionally invite development sector organizations, social sector organizations during the experience at ISB for people to get more structured exposure into the space. I think one of the biggest drawbacks of the development sector is that our story is more perceptions in the mainstream than realities in the mainstream. And to bridge that gap, we need to have more sort of, call it, blood flow on both sides.
Yeah.
So I think we should be doing that at campus a lot more. And we would love as a nudge to partner with ISB on things like this.
I think we'd love this offer, and we'd love to take you up on this. Yeah.
And second is that I think there is a sort of assumption that students won't compromise campus salaries for purpose. We have carried that notion at Nudge and Give, saying, oh, leave top B schools. Why would somebody come and join Nudge? And maybe I'm giving less credit than young people in colleges may deserve, that we should try and attempt. And we have seen that people do apply from college campuses directly to us, but we haven't gone. Maybe if we go, we see 2x, 3x, 4x the numbers.
So Atul, you've graduated in 2004 and you had multiple touch points with the school since then. If you were to think of, the current class who are, in session at ISB at this point of time, what would you recommend to them to do over the next few months that they're on campus?
I think one of the things I realized grew over time is that we discuss these pivots a lot, right? People pivot their career from domain 1 to domain 2, etc., etc. I think we don't realize that those are exception stories and not the norms. Knowing that if I knew that much earlier, I may have spent more time exploring Net Impact Club time in college campus.
Yeah.
I may have explored more domain choices before choosing to be in domain this. I was in technology pre-ISB, so I joined technology post-ISB. But ISB provides this amazing opportunity to pivot because you already have a discontinuity, which is a productive and a positive discontinuity. You're not having to take this break because you have to attend to something else in life. You are building yourself in a very interesting way at the facility, intellect, resources at ISB. So best time to take a pivot. I don't think we all invest in thoughtfully designing that pivot that we could. So my advice to my own younger self at ISB, as well as to the students who are already there, is that use this time to find out what direction you take right after ISB, because changing that isn't as easy and as common as it sounds from the stories we hear of exceptions. And hence, if they make that decision thoughtfully, chances are they'll gain a decade in their life in that direction that they would take. I regret that I could have easily done this work a decade sooner, right? If I had chosen it more carefully.
There are classes, there are sessions, there are, sort of learnings from your time at ISB that some we forget, but some we carry for a long time for a variety of reasons, including our own personal choices and orientation. How have you been able to use some of your learnings back then when you reflect on those things? Are there a couple of things that stand out for you in terms of learnings?
I think what was unique for me from ISB was that I walked in as a STEM student, engineering student. I walked in with the percentage of students for STEM were quite high. But the people that I saw outside of STEM was actually very eye-opening for me. Doctor, major, educationist. There were so many people from diverse backgrounds. And I was very initially surprised with how much diversity, intellect, and smarts existed outside of my very narrow view of engineering. To be honest, it was intimidating at first, but then when you realize such awesome people around you, you start sort of making friends and you realize there is so much more in the outside world than the world that I brought into ISB or came into ISB with. And I think that appreciation for diversity of talent, bringing very, very complementary skills, is a message that, like the learning that I've carried with me. I think the second thing that ISB did for me was building a certain level of aspiration, both by ISB's own aspiration as a startup institute in my third year, which was visible in the air from how ISB talked about ISB itself, but also from the people who came to campus. I very distinctly remember 2 chats that I got exposed to at ISB, and they both changed me. One, which I have told to that person, Sunil Bharti Mittal came to campus and had a high tea. So this entrepreneurial energy, but also the ambition that he carried for Airtel One. And second was the intellect and the understanding of India that Manish Sabharwal from Team Lease, he came to campus during my time. And he had like one of the most popular talks at campus in my batch and many batches after that as well.
Very thoughtful and articulate.
And he joined Nudge as an advisor when I talked to him about what I'm trying to do. But both of these people left this sort of mark on me saying that, look, your ambition can be at the level of which the problem is. And I think I've carried that ambition into the nudge from ISB and then nurtured that over time.
Beautiful. This conversation can go on and on, but I'm mindful of our time. I'm going to ask you a few questions. This is the more popular segment, the rapid fire segment.
Okay.
So what is Atul reading at this moment?
So I'm reading 2 books. One is What Went Wrong with Capitalism, Ruchir Sharma's book.
Yeah.
And the second is, so I have a very high energy border collie, and he's having some behavior issues with my daughter leaving for college, etc. So I'm reading a book called The Dog Vinci Code,
Okay.
by John, which is how to fix dog behavior issues.
What was your favorite campus hangout?
I remember I got exposed to water polo at ISB for the first time. So I really enjoyed the water polo games at ISB.
Yeah. Favorite campus memories?
I think mostly playing more than academia. I think behind SP2 we had this park that was getting built then.
Yeah.
A lot of cricket and soccer there.
Lovely. A lesser known fact about Atul Satija?
Well, the fact that I have a very, very poor short-term memory.
Okay.
I tend to forget almost everything that happens in the short term. So you have to keep taking notes and remember.
Do your colleagues know about this?
Yes. But that's about it.
What's the last thing that you did for the first time?
I tried my first time, digital minimalism.
Okay.
All of us are addicted to devices all the time, right? So I tried my hand at digital minimalism, like rationing how many minutes I'll spend on what during the day and how many times I'll do it. I failed at it. So I have to try it again and hopefully be successful this time.
Why do you love writing your sentences in lowercase? I think including your name and everything else.
So part of it is because when I started Nudge, the Nudge logo, unlike most nonprofits, has used a uppercase. So it's a very heavy font, heavy logo. And they started almost like as a countermeasure to balance it with a subtle, soft, gentle way of approaching your work, your comments, your communication, that lowercase is softer. So play with that. I think it was also a counter resistance to like the loudness that you see on TV, on social media, to say, look, what you can achieve with nudge, you can't achieve with force. What you can achieve with softness and kindness, you can't achieve with brute force, etc. So it's just a continuity of that.
If I were to ask you to sort of, to describe what ISB means to you, how would you put that in a sentence? Or
I think it was a window to the world for me. I think it opened a window to see the world beyond what I was exposed to before.
Lovely. Atul, thank you so much for chatting with us. I think of you as someone who, I wouldn't call it perfect because then that means there's no room for growth, but someone who sort of is an exemplar in terms of how you represent a purpose, the power of transformation. There are many such good things, but all of which with the one sort of underlying sort of story or the intent of impact, and this agenda of poverty alleviation is so powerful that we are very proud of you as an alum of ISB and proud of the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'm a proud alum that I actually went to ISB and benefited from the 1 year I spent there. Thank you.
Thank you.